Welcome into Win the Line, presented by the 33rd team. My name is Tanner Kern, joined alongside former CFL defensive lineman Max Forde. Max, week 3 is here. We have an awesome slate to talk about and all the mismatches throughout the week. But before we get into that, we got to break down the injuries because they're starting to stack up a little bit right now. A few questionable guys. Ravens tackle Ronnie Staley, Ravens center Tyler Lindenbaum, Cowboys tackle Tyler Smith, Texans OT Laramie Tunsil, Dolphins OT Teron Armstead, and then Giants tackle Andrew Thomas. All those guys are probably going to play, but they are questionable. So just keep an eye on that for your fantasy and betting. Out of that list, which guy is the most meaningful to their unit?
I've got to go with Laramie Tunsil there. That team's been passing the ball about 40 times a game. You've got a rookie quarterback. You want to keep him upright so you can go through his development, and he's just a linchpin for that line. So you want to have him back.
Yeah, CJ Stroud is throwing the ball a million times a game. It's crazy to think. So Tunsil is a guy that has to be in there. I would say Andrew Thomas just to protect Daniel Jones tomorrow night. That could be a big mismatch as we're going to talk about here in a minute. A couple serious injuries, ones to note. Bills defensive end Leonard Floyd. He is day-to-day right now with an ankle injury. They have a huge matchup against Washington. And then Patriots tackle Trent Brown, who's got a concussion, did not play last week. Hopefully he'll be back for them this week. They need it. We look at Leonard Floyd here. How much does he mean to this Buffalo Bills defense?
You know what? He means a lot. They don't have a lot of rushers that can do what he does. He's kind of that speed rusher for them, whereas the other guys they have, that's not really their game. They do have a lot of depth on the edge, though, so I think that they might be able to cover some of his production. But from a stylistic standpoint, Epinesa, you've got Shaq Lawson, and Greg Rousseau aren't rushing the way that he rushes. So he gives them that different dynamic for the offensive tackles to see, and they're not going to have that this week if they don't have him. So.
I agree. He's fantastic with his hands. It's going to make a huge difference. We're going to break down that injury a little more because we are going to focus on that game. But Patriots play the Jets this week. It's a good matchup, I would say, for the Patriots defense. Not a great matchup for the Patriots offense going against the Jets. Trent Brown's a big part of it, just signed a contract extension. He is questionable with the concussion. He means a lot to this team. If he doesn't play, do you see the Patriots moving the ball at all?
It's going to be tough, man. Calvin Anderson had a rough week last week. That's who was backing him up. And if they've got to go back to that well against the Jets defense, that's really strong front there, I think it's going to be a long night. So,
yeah, 100%. The Patriots could be a long night no matter if he plays or if he doesn't, just because of how ineffective they've been moving the ball. A couple big mismatches to focus on. These are more for betting. DFS-wise, these prices are just way too high to play. But the San Francisco 49ers against the New York Giants on Thursday Night Football should be an interesting game. The 49ers are favored by 10 points here. When I look at this matchup up front, though, it is the Niners who should dominate. Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, Javon Hargrave, all these guys are going to cause havoc for Daniel Jones. I think it's going to be a long night for him. What do you think?
oh, yeah, got to agree with you there. That front that you just named off there, they've been one of the top defensive fronts in the game for a while now. And going against a Giants front that I did have some hopes for. They had some potential coming into the season, but they have not looked great the first 2 weeks, and last week struggled against Arizona. I think that this is going to be like a little bit of blood in the water for that San Francisco front there. So, yeah, just looking forward to seeing that as a defensive guy.
Definitely. They've gotten after. I think we're going to see a lot of sacks, maybe an interception from Daniel Jones. You can check that out. Josh Larkey just dropped that in the 33rd team Discord. That's linked on our Twitter. So go join there. A bunch of free prop picks. But one that I'm looking at, Daniel Jones over under 39.5 rushing yards. I do think Daniel Jones is going to be running for his life. I think there's also going to be some designed runs in there without Saquon Barkley. Should also help the offensive line out. If the 49ers have to account for his legs and the passing game, could mean something, could get the ball rolling there. I'm going to take the over on 39.5 rushing yards. What would you do?
Man, that's a tough line, I think. Might have me swallowing my words. I got to have to disagree with you here because, I don't know, like, aside from that front, they've got the linebackers on the second level that I think can track him down. You've got a Fred Warner out there that can just, I mean, he's a savage. He's gonna chase down just a heat-seeking missile out there. So I do think that, like you said, Daniel Jones is going to be able to try to bring something with his legs, and he normally does each week produce that way. But this is a really tough matchup against not just that front four, but that front seven, really. So,
yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Andrew Thomas's hamstring plays out, it holds up against a team as efficient rushing the passer as the 49ers. Moving into this Dallas versus Arizona game, Dallas defense versus the Arizona offense. The Cardinals, heartbreaking loss last week, heartbreaking blow up on offense and defense. We look at the Dallas defense here. I think they're going to have an exceptional game. Micah Parsons is actually the most bet player by bets and handle since Sunday on DraftKings to win MVP right now. What do you see from him in this game?
Man, it's just going to be scary hours in this game. Uh, Arizona, I did think came out with some energy last week, got out to that lead, and actually did surprise me a little bit. But down in that second half, they kind of broke down the way you kind of expected the whole game to go, really. And this Dallas defense is just, they've been unstoppable. Like you said, he's been bet on the most to be MVP. I didn't know that, but it doesn't surprise me the way he's been playing. He's the motor that makes that team go, which is not something you can say about a defensive player very often. So, and they're winning. So he's a scary guy to go against for any front on the offense, and I think that this offense just isn't going to have an answer for that.
Definitely. 6 solo tackles, 3 sacks, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery from Parsons. Let's look at James Conner for a second. Does he hit 50 yards rushing in this game? I do think the Cardinals are going to be playing from behind a little bit, which is definitely going to take away from some of his rushing production. But he did look good last week. Just by bulk alone, do you think he gets there?
Like you said, I kind of lean into that game script. I don't think they're going to be able to rush as much, so I don't think the bulk will be able to get there just based on that. But I will agree that he definitely looked good. And again, like I said, I was very surprised by Arizona. I like the energy that I saw out of them. They're not a team that's just going to lay down. I know a lot of people will pick them to be last. They probably still don't have the kind of talent that other teams have, but they do have a lot of fight in them. So, yeah, I can't take that away from them.
Definitely. So if you're looking at this game from a betting perspective up front, look for Cardinals players to go under and then sack props for that Dallas defense, including Micah Parsons. The Philadelphia defense versus Tampa Bay offense. We have a Monday night doubleheader. This is the first game. Baker Mayfield, is he an efficient quarterback right now? It kind of seems like it. The offensive line's done a decent job protecting him so far. I think they're going to have a tough time, though, against Brandon Graham, Jordan Davis, Josh Sweat, Jalen Carter, a guy who's been really good this year, right? So how do you see this game playing out?
Yeah, Tampa Bay's looked good so far, but that front you just named off for Philadelphia, it's a little bit different than those fronts they've seen from Minnesota and from Chicago there. So I think that's going to be tough. And I think really where it's specifically going to be tough for them is on that interior, where they have a little bit less experience on the offensive interior for Tampa Bay. And Philadelphia's defensive interior has just been giving teams nightmares right now. They're playing in the backfield, just reestablishing the line of scrimmage. And I think that specific mismatch is going to be something that's going to be tough. And aside from that, Tampa Bay's actually been, even though they've been keeping Baker upright, they've been pretty inefficient on the ground against those teams. And yeah, I just don't see them getting anything better against that Eagles front. So
Yeah, Cody Mauch, the second round pick out of North Dakota State for the Buccaneers. Very talented offensive lineman, just not a guy that maybe we want to count on this early in the season, this big of a spot. Looking at Baker Mayfield's passing prop here, it's probably going to be in the low 2s. I'm taking the over on it just because I think they're going to be playing from behind. I'm not saying the Buccaneers offensive line is going to protect him, but I don't see Tampa Bay having much success running the football or be your lean here.
yeah, if we're in the low 2s, I gotta agree with you. I think they've got a pass and they've got some weapons for him too. You got a guy like Chris Godwin get open short, run after the catch, and Mike Evans is always a big play machine. So I gotta agree with you there.
Definitely. All right, moving into some DFS talk here. We found some value plays in the same game, actually. So we're going to determine which side's better here for the money. These are plays under $3,000. We're going to start talking about the Buffalo defense versus the Washington offense. Then we'll flip flop. We'll talk Washington defense versus the Buffalo offense. But the Buffalo D is priced at $2,900 in the spot. They have been getting a lot of pressure. They are 6th in least passing yards allowed per game, the Buffalo defense. But with that being said, they're going to face a strong offense that's started to play better and has a little confidence with Sam Howell. I do think the Buffalo defensive front wins the battle against the Commanders, but I don't know how convincing it is, and I don't think it's worth this $2,900 price. What about you?
Yeah, as we get into the value plays, I do think that this Buffalo defense is strong enough to consider at $2,900. But at the same time, Washington is clicking. I think the thing that really makes me want to lean into it a little bit more, maybe not plug them into every lineup, but into a few lineups there, is just how successful they were against the run last week against Las Vegas. Josh Jacobs rushed for negative yards. Now you go against Washington, who they do have some balance to their offense, but I think that running game does help open up that passing game. And I'm not sure that they have the ability to open up those rushing lanes. If Las Vegas couldn't spring Josh Jacobs, is Washington going to be able to spring Brian Robinson on those kinds of runs? So I I'd agree that Washington is definitely taking a step forward here, but I think Buffalo wins this matchup, but I also don't think it's like a obvious and clear choice there. So I think sprinkle them a little bit, but not plug them in everywhere.
If Leonard Floyd is questionable, you're probably going to get better odds for a sack prop, or if he does play, you're probably going to get better odds for a sack prop since he is questionable, just because of the risk there. I like him to actually do something special. Sam Howell's not the most mobile quarterback in the pocket. If he can get around the tackles and work his hands, I think he could have a sack. And also, I think we're going to see the Commanders be forced to sit back in the pocket and not necessarily do a ton of quick game, just because I do kind of see them playing from behind here.
Yeah, no, totally. I'd agree there. Buffalo's, yeah. I mean, we've talked about them before. They've got one of the top quarterbacks in the league, and that's always going to be something that. I mean, great quarterbacks become good when you get pressure on them. Good quarterbacks become average. Average quarterbacks become bad. But when you have a great one, you get the pressure. He's still pretty good.
So speaking of great quarterbacks, we're calling Josh Allen a great quarterback. He does love to turn the ball over, and this is a reason to lean on the Washington defense here. I think for $2,400, they have some really good pass rushers in Chase Young and Montez Sweat, guys that can pressure Allen and force him into turnovers. Would you consider this $2,400 line, or would you rather take the $2,900 with the Buffalo defense?
I think just the price savings, you can spend that elsewhere, maybe get a few more points. That opportunity cost, I think that I'll probably plug in Washington a little bit more frequently there. You do have guys like Montez Sweat and Chase Young that are just as big and just as athletic as Josh Allen. So it's not like he's going to be able to just outrun them or truck them or anything like that. They're guys that can keep up with them, get them to the ground, keep that contained. And you got those interior pass rushers and Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen there. So I think they can get pressure on them. I do think that the Bills' offensive line is kind of a league average group that gets helped by having elite quarterback play behind them. And so I think having a dominant first group defensive line for Washington is going to be able to help them affect the quarterback and kind of, like you said, maybe force them to turn over the ball there. So.
Yeah, they need to shut down the run. That's the biggest thing in this game. If they're able to do that, I think they're going to be just fine here. And I do like this price for $2,400. Very good value play, especially with Allen's turnover issues that we've seen from him. So we've talked about a lot of games on here. What would be a game that you're looking at that we didn't necessarily talk about, or one that you're just super excited about this week?
Yeah, one that I'm looking forward to that I think a lot of fantasy and DFS people are going to be looking at, not because of the trenches, but because of what's happening in the backfield, but is Cleveland and Tennessee. I think that a lot of people who are going and getting that, Jerome Forde there for Cleveland running back, they're going to be a little bit shy plugging him into their lineup against Tennessee because Tennessee does have a great run defense. But a lot of people are forgetting that Cleveland has a very good offensive line. And so that's a battle that I think is going to be really fun. Both those teams like to run the ball. I mean, we're linemen. I'm not a big fan of the 7-on-7 football, even though it might be more efficient. I like seeing some of that big boy football, and I think we're going to get that there. What about yourself?
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to get it with Deshaun Watson throwing the ball down the field. I think we're going to see a lot of design runs with him just because I don't have belief that he can throw the ball anymore. It's hard. Watching that game the other night, it was hard to think that he actually led the NFL in passing at some point in his career. But the game I'm most excited for is Bucks versus Eagles. I know we talked about it on here, but I'm in the camp that I think Baker Mayfield's a lot better than people were expecting coming into the season. I think this is going to be a huge test for him, and I'm excited to see how the Buccaneers hang out or hold up. From a betting perspective, the line is moving in favor of the Buccaneers, and the Eagles are getting about 80% of the money right now. So that's a positive sign for Tampa Bay bettors there. But yeah, that would be my game. I think we have an awesome slate ahead. But Max, this was a ton of fun again. Hopefully we can get some money for the people, and we'll keep it going here.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tanner.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. That was Win the Line presented by the 33rd team. We'll be back next week for another episode breaking down the week 4 slate.